Hi, my name is Grace Hecker, and I chose to write on the drafting portion of the writing process. I also chose to write it or talk about the structure because I think the drafting portion and the structure are some of the most important parts of the writing process. I found a reading that relates to this in Chapter 7 of Everything's an Argument. It begins by talking about how a solid structure is a good way to enhance your paper because it allows there to be a steady flow. Throughout the reading, it describes how there's many different structures and patterns when it comes to writing argumentative papers. Examples of these are the classical pattern, confrontational, and non-confrontational patterns. The classical pattern is something that most of us are pretty familiar with. It has 5 parts to it. It starts with the introduction, which helps to win the attention of the audience, present the topic or the problem. The background moves on to present information, including personal stories that are important to the argument. Lines of the argument present good reasons, including logical and emotional appeals that support the claim or the introduction. Alternative arguments consider alternative points of view and opposing arguments. And the conclusion summarizes the argument and just kind of pulls the entire paper together. So to begin, we're going to start with the non-confrontational Rogerian argumentation. This is a willingness to think about the opposing positions and describe them. With this structure, you have to admit that other claims do exist and that they could possibly be reasonable. So it starts with the introduction and then the context. Then it moves on to the writer's position. So that's your position, and you talk about the issues that you're standing for. Then the benefits to the opponent are you are explaining to the opponents how they would benefit from adopting your position. Another non-confrontational pattern would be the invitational argument, and this is based more on winning over the opponent, not winning over the opponent, but getting groups to work together. This strives for connection, collaboration, and mutualism. The structure for this is more of a two-way conversation rather than an introduction to conclusion structure, and it's used to invite new perceptions and fresh ideas. So a type of confrontational argument or pattern would be the Tolhuman argument. This type of structure describes the way that ordinary people make reasonable arguments. This structure consists of the claim, a qualifier, reason and evidence, warrant, and backing. A claim is an argument you wish to prove. It's debatable and controversial statements, and the claim answers the question, so what's your point and where do you stand on that? An example of a claim from the book is NASA should launch a human expedition to Mars. Evidence is used to support your claim. Types of evidence can be personal experience, anecdotes, which are similar stories, facts, and evidence from authorities, which is like a police officer. Then you move on to the warrant, which is the connection between the logic and persuasion. It answers the question, how exactly do I get from the data to the claim? This explains what assumptions are. So an example from the book would be, the reason is, I've been drinking since the age of 14 without problems. The warrant would be, what works for me should work for everyone. So the claim is, the legal age for drinking should be lowered. The next part is offering evidence and backing. This is done after the argument has been outlined. The evidence that's used to back up a claim can be logical, factual, emotional, and appeals to values. The evidence used to support the warrant can be emotional, ethical, and logical. An example of this from the book is the warrant would be what unifies the nation ought to be a national priority, and the backing portion would be Americans want to be part of something bigger than themselves. This is an example of an emotional appeal. The qualifiers acknowledge the limitations to the argument. So examples of this are few, rarely, in some cases, often, and perhaps. And in Chapter 7, there is a long list of them presented. An example of this that's given in the book is, in most cases, people who do not go to college earn less than those who do. The portion that's italicized is the qualifier, and it kind of says that this could happen, but it doesn't always happen, and without this qualifier, it would be unqualified. Conditions of rebuttal. are objections to the argument, which is recognizing and understanding the reasonable objections of people who see the world differently. An example of this is you have a warrant of if the federal government can support the military, then it can also support other programs. This warrant is frail and can be questioned by others, so you would want to revise it. One problem that I have faced in my writing process is setting up my structure wrong, which has caused my paper to kind of sound sloppy and not put together. This happened in my 150 class, English 150, and my paper did not have a flow to it, and this caused my reader to become confused and disengaged from my paper. If the structure is wrong, the reader doesn't understand what's happening, and this can cause the paper to also be discredited. This paper, having the wrong structure, also caused me to have a hard time writing the paper. The solution that I got from this was that I had my teachers and other students in my class help to revise my paper multiple times. Having others read through my paper let me know that it seemed like it was kind of all over the place and that my writing could be better. Having others read your paper is often very helpful because they catch things that you don't. The so what factor, skills that I learned from this class that can be used elsewhere are things like not procrastinating. So not procrastinating on my homework and my tests can give me time to actually understand the information that I'm going to be reading about or writing about. Having good time management can be used when planning my schoolwork, extracurricular activities, and work in general. This can help me to make sure that I have everything on time and that I get places on time. Lack of research can be involved in multiple aspects of your life, like when you're writing a research paper, if you don't have the right research, you seem kind of all over the place and sloppy. Things like finding a new house, if you don't research it enough, you may end up with a not so good house. A solution of this that I learned is that you need to allow yourself time to have enough chances to revise your draft multiple times, and that peer criticism sometimes isn't always bad, and that they can always catch things that you don't. Questions that I'm asking is, what is the best way to break the habit of procrastination? Because I procrastinate everything. And how can I make my papers have a better flow to them?